The afternoon sun streamed through the windows of the Chateau Marmont's exclusive lounge, casting golden light across polished hardwood floors. The air was heavy with expensive cologne, whiskey, and ambition. In the corner, partially hidden by exotic plants, sat Clint Eastwood, his weathered face set in that familiar, stoic expression, blue eyes still piercing despite his 92 years. The Hollywood Foreign Press Association had organized this event to honor lifetime achievements in film. Directors huddled with producers, veteran actors reminisced, and newcomers desperately tried to network without appearing too eager. Among those newcomers was Trent Reeves, a 28-year-old rising star whose performance in Midnight Junction had earned him critical acclaim and studio attention. His chiseled jawline and bad boy image had graced entertainment magazines nationwide, with industry whispers suggesting he was next in line for a major franchise. "That's him," whispered Madeline, Trent's publicist, nodding toward Eastwood. "A photo with him would be perfect, the passing of the torch between generations." Trent ran his fingers through his carefully tousled hair. "You think he even knows who I am?" "It doesn't matter," Madeline replied. "Just be respectful. He's a living legend." Trent's eyes narrowed slightly. "Legend, sure, but his best days are half a century behind him. His last few films were basically dinosaurs gasping for relevance." Several heads turned at his volume, but Trent didn't notice. He straightened his shoulders and walked toward Eastwood's table, 3 previous cocktails fueling his confidence. A photographer from Variety adjusted his camera, sensing a potential moment. Industry veterans watched with raised eyebrows, recognizing the collision course unfolding before them. Before we continue with this Hollywood showdown, we'd love for you to hit the subscribe button if you're enjoying this incredible story of legends clashing. Drop a comment below letting us know which Clint Eastwood film is your all-time favorite. Your support helps us bring more stories like this directly to you. As Trent approached the table, the room temperature seemed to drop. Conversations quieted, and a subtle shift occurred in the atmosphere, the kind of change animals sense before a storm. Steven Spielberg, who had been chatting with Eastwood, noticed Trent's approach and tactfully excused himself with a knowing look. He'd seen this type before, young talents who mistook momentary success for enduring significance. "Mr. Eastwood," Trent said, his voice carrying too loudly across the hushed room. "Trent Reeves. I'm sure you've heard of Midnight Junction?" Eastwood looked up slowly, his expression impassive. The sun highlighted the deep creases in his face, each earned through decades under desert suns and studio lights. His pale blue eyes, which had stared down countless adversaries on screen, took in the young actor. "Can't say that I have," he replied, his voice that familiar gravelly whisper that had delivered cinema's most iconic lines. A flush crept up Trent's neck. "It broke box office records last summer. Critics called my performance generational." Eastwood gestured to the empty chair across from him, a simple courtesy that somehow carried the weight of a command. "Sit down, kid." Trent hesitated, thrown off by being called kid in a room full of industry elites, but took the seat. The leather creaked beneath him as cameras discreetly captured the moment. "You know," Trent continued, leaning forward with false intimacy, "I actually studied your early work when preparing for my role. It's interesting to see how acting has evolved since your time." A quiet murmur rippled through those close enough to hear. Madeline, watching from across the room, closed her eyes in mortification. Eastwood took another sip of whiskey, unhurried. "Is that right?" "Absolutely. The industry's completely different now. More dynamic, more challenging." Trent's voice grew animated. "The method approach I take, it's a whole different level of commitment than what actors did in the 70s and 80s. Someone nearby coughed uncomfortably. Martin Scorsese, passing by, stopped in his tracks, eyebrows shooting upward. "For my last role," Trent continued, "I lived on the streets for 3 weeks, completely transformed myself. That's what today's audiences expect. Psychological realism, not just delivering lines and looking tough." He paused, flashing what he thought was a disarming smile. "No offense." The room had grown so quiet that the ice shifting in Eastwood's glass sounded like an avalanche. The old director studied Trent for a long moment. "You're challenging me," Eastwood stated rather than asked, his voice low but somehow filling the entire space. Trent's confidence faltered before he doubled down. Not challenging exactly, just pointing out that maybe it's time the industry looked forward instead of constantly celebrating the past. I mean, directing from a chair, one-take scenes, those techniques work for their time, but cinema has moved beyond that. The photographer from Variety was frantically capturing every second, knowing he was witnessing something that would be discussed in film circles for years. Eastwood set his glass down with deliberate care. When he spoke, his voice was measured, the same tone he had used when delivering his most devastating screen moments. You know, son, I've been in this business longer than you've been alive. I've seen talent come and go, real talent and the other kind. Trent's smile froze, uneasiness creeping through him. In my day, Eastwood continued, we had a saying about actors who talk more than they listen. He leaned forward slightly, his presence somehow expanding despite his age. They don't last long. The air between them crackled with tension. Trent opened his mouth, but Eastwood wasn't finished. You mentioned method acting, living on the streets for 3 whole weeks. There was the faintest hint of amusement in Eastwood's eyes. When I made Unforgiven, I didn't need to live as an outlaw to understand William Money. You know why? The question hung in the air. Trent shifted uncomfortably. Because acting isn't about pretending to be someone else. It's about finding the truth. Eastwood's voice remained quiet, but each word carried the weight of decades. And the truth is, you're so busy trying to convince everyone you're something special that you've missed the most important lesson in this business. Which is, Trent asked, his bravado evaporating. Humility, Eastwood said simply. Without it, you're just making noise. The silence that followed was deafening. The room had become a tableau of stunned faces and held breath. Someone's phone camera flashed, capturing the moment Trent's expression crumbled from confidence to shame. It wasn't just what Eastwood had said, it was how he had said it. No raised voice, no anger, just the calm certainty of a man with nothing left to prove. Trent stood abruptly, nearly knocking over his chair. You don't understand modern cinema, he sputtered, face flushed with humiliation. You're obsolete. Eastwood didn't rise to the bait. He simply raised his glass slightly, as if in a toast. Maybe so. Good luck with your career, Mr. Reeves. The dismissal was so gentle yet so final that it hit harder than any shouting match. As Trent stormed away, pushing past onlookers, the room gradually returned to its previous rhythm, but with an undercurrent of whispered conversations. Outside the Chateau Marmont, the California sunset painted the sky orange and pink. Trent stood on the sidewalk, his perfect suit now rumpled, his carefully constructed image in tatters. His phone buzzed incessantly. News of the confrontation had already reached social media. It's trending, Madeline said grimly. Trent Eastwood's shutdown is everywhere. Video clips are going viral. He humiliated me, Trent muttered, loosening his tie with trembling fingers. Do you know who I am? I just signed a 3-picture deal. My last film made $300 million. Madeline looked up from her phone. Trent, you challenged Clint Eastwood, one of the most respected figures in Hollywood, and suggested he doesn't understand cinema. What did you expect? I was just speaking the truth. His style is outdated. But even as the words left his mouth, they sounded hollow. Well, your truth just got you uninvited from the Phillips dinner tomorrow, Madeline said, scanning messages. And Warner Brothers wants to reschedule your meeting about the Harrison project. The color drained from Trent's face. What? They can't do that. My contract. This isn't about contracts. It's about respect. Madeline's voice softened. You publicly disrespected someone the entire industry reveres. There are consequences. As reality sank in, Trent leaned against the wall, suddenly feeling every bit the inexperienced newcomer he'd tried to disguise with bravado. Inside, the celebration continued. Eastwood remained in his corner, now joined by Morgan Freeman and Al Pacino, their conversation punctuated by occasional laughter. If the confrontation had affected him, he showed no sign. The fallout spread through Hollywood like wildfire. Video clips circulated online, each seemingly more damaging than the last. By midnight, entertainment news websites had picked up the story. Rising star challenges, Eastwood gets schooled in humility. Actor's career in jeopardy after Eastwood confrontation. Watch Clint Eastwood silences. Arrogant actor with just 19 words. The next morning, Trent awoke to find his social media flooded with negative comments. His phone showed 17 missed calls from his agent, plus a terse email requesting an urgent strategy meeting. His bathroom mirror reflected a face he barely recognized. Haggard, uncertain, the cultivated confidence gone. As he splashed water on his face, his phone buzzed with a text from Madeline. "Turn on entertainment tonight. Now." With dread, Trent switched on the television. Shocking confrontation between legend Clint Eastwood and up-and-coming actor Trent Reeves has the industry talking. Sources tell us Reeves approached Eastwood unprovoked, challenging the four-time Oscar winner's understanding of modern cinema. The screen cut to cell phone video capturing the exact moment of Eastwood's devastating response about humility, followed by Trent's hasty retreat and reactions from industry insiders. "It was the most uncomfortable thing I've ever witnessed," said one blurred-out figure. "Everyone was thinking, who does this kid think he is?" Another source added, "Challenging Eastwood on filmmaking is like challenging Jordan on basketball. It showed a fundamental misunderstanding of the industry." The host reappeared. Following the incident, sources tell us several major studios are reconsidering projects with Reeves, citing concerns about professionalism. Trent sank onto his bed, the remote slipping from his fingers. This wasn't just embarrassing, it was potentially career-ending. His agent finally reached him, the conversation brief and painful. "I've been doing damage control all morning," she said tightly. "Universal is reevaluating your contract. The Scorsese audition? Canceled. And don't start on what this did to the Netflix negotiations." "It was just a conversation," Trent protested weakly. "No, you're underreacting. This town has a long memory, and you just gave everyone a reason to remember you as the kid who didn't know his place." She paused before continuing more softly. "I can try to salvage this, but understand, this isn't going away. You'll have to make amends publicly and convincingly." 3 days later, Trent sat in his agent's office, listening as publicists outlined a strategy for salvaging his reputation. A carefully crafted public apology, an exclusive interview with Vanity Fair, and hopefully a photo with Eastwood to change the narrative. The thought of facing Eastwood again sent anxiety through Trent. But what choice did he have? The next week passed in a blur of canceled appearances and tense meetings. Trent found himself suddenly invisible in a town where he had recently been celebrated. Then, unexpectedly, came hope. Eastwood had agreed to a brief meeting, not a public reconciliation, but a private conversation at his Warner Brothers office. The morning of the meeting, Trent arrived 30 minutes early, stomach knotted with anxiety. Eastwood's office was surprisingly modest. No ostentatious displays of awards, just a functional space. "Mr. Eastwood," Trent began, his rehearsed apology already sounding stilted, "I wanted to express my sincere—" Eastwood held up a hand. "Sit down, kid." Once again, Trent obeyed, lowering himself into the chair. The silence stretched for an eternity. "You know why I agreed to this meeting?" Eastwood asked finally, his blue eyes fixed on Trent. "To accept my apology?" Eastwood shook his head. "Because you remind me of someone I used to know. Someone who thought talent was enough, who didn't understand that this business is a marathon, not a sprint." He leaned back. "That someone was me, about 60 years ago." Trent blinked, caught off guard. "You?" "I was a contract player at Universal in the 50s. Thought I knew everything." A ghost of a smile crossed Eastwood's face. "Had my share of run-ins with the old guard." He reached into a drawer and pulled out a sheet of paper, sliding it toward Trent, a casting sheet for an untitled project, with Trent's name highlighted among potential leads. "I'm producing a film next year," Eastwood continued. "Story about a young hotshot who learns hard lessons about life and legacy. Your agent sent your reel over before our encounter. You've got something real, raw, but real." Trent stared at the paper, then back at Eastwood. "You're offering me a role? After what I said?" "I'm offering you a chance," Eastwood corrected. "Whether you take it, whether you're ready, that's up to you." He stood slowly. What happened at the chateau doesn't have to define you, but what you do next will. Remember that. As Trent rose to leave, still stunned, Eastwood added, "By the way, I watched Midnight Junction. Not bad, little indulgent in the third act, but you committed to the character. That counts for something." The qualified compliment hit Trent harder than any criticism. He had spent days assuming Eastwood hated him, yet the legend had not only watched his work, but found something worthwhile in it. Outside, Trent stood motionless, the casting sheet still in his hand. The studio bustled around him, crews moving between sound stages, the everyday miracle of movies being made. For the first time since the confrontation, he felt something other than dread or self-pity. Not relief exactly, nor the return of former confidence, but something more valuable: perspective. His phone buzzed with a text from his agent. "How did it go? Call me ASAP." But Trent didn't call. Instead, he walked slowly through the lot, past historic sound stages where legends like Eastwood had crafted stories that would outlive them all. By the time he reached his car, he had decided not to do the Vanity Fair interview or follow the publicist's script. Instead, he would do something harder: earn back respect through work, through humility, through proving himself worthy of Eastwood's unexpected chance. A memory surfaced, something Eastwood had said during their first encounter. "Acting isn't about pretending to be someone else, it's about finding the truth." Perhaps it was time to find his own truth, beyond the carefully constructed image he had been so desperate to protect. 6 months later, on a crisp autumn evening, the premiere of Eastwood's newest film drew Hollywood elites to the TCL Chinese Theater. Among the arriving cast was Trent Reeves, almost unrecognizable from the brash young actor who had challenged Eastwood. When asked about working with Eastwood, Trent's answer reflected his journey. "It was the greatest learning experience of my life," he said, words careful but unscripted. "Not just about acting, but about what it means to be a professional in this industry, about legacy and responsibility." Later at the after-party, Trent again approached Eastwood's table. But this time, there was no challenge in his posture, no desperate need to prove himself. "Mr. Eastwood," he said simply, "thank you for the opportunity. I won't forget it." Eastwood looked up, those legendary blue eyes assessing once more. Then unexpectedly, he smiled, transforming his weathered face. "You did good work, kid," he said, gesturing to the chair beside him. "Now sit down and tell me what you're doing next." As Trent took the seat, cameras captured the moment. Not the confrontation everyone expected, but something more powerful: the passing of wisdom from one generation to the next, the continuation of a legacy beyond any single film or career. In the weeks that followed, a new headline circulated: "Redemption in Hollywood: How Clint Eastwood Transformed a Rival into a Protege." The story went viral, but neither Trent nor Eastwood paid much attention. They were already focused on their next projects, the work that had always mattered more than headlines. And in that work lay the true lesson, one that extended beyond Hollywood to anyone who had ever made a mistake or needed a second chance. It's never too late to learn humility, to earn respect, and to begin again with a clearer understanding of what truly matters. In an industry built on illusion, that was perhaps the most important truth of all.